Cotton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to note with some astonishment that there was a 8-minute exchange between Senator Schumer and the witnesses about the meaning of the grandfather clause. I think we got some kind of answer out of it, but also know that administration officials have said repeatedly that Iran will exploit every ambiguity in the text of this agreement to their advantage, so I can only imagine what they will say about that clause should it come to pass. But moving on, Secretary Sherman, there's a lot of commentary about access to Iran's nuclear sites, their military sites. It's throughout the JCPOA. Secretary Kerry, Secretary Moniz have frequently talked about managed access. Can you assure us that this access will actually be physical access? IAEA inspectors will be physically walking into these sites and taking samples or installing equipment?
I think that every situation is different, Senator, and that the IAEA has the capability, the expert knowledge to make sure that whatever they do can be technically authenticated. So I can't go through every hypothetical situation. I know that Director General Amano will, I'm sure, will get asked these questions by your colleagues in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in this informal meeting. So I would rely on his answers more on than my answers. But what I am assured of is that whatever they do in every circumstance where they believe they need to have access, it will be technically authenticated and it will meet the standards that they must have and that they require for ensuring verification and monitoring.
The answer then, it sounds like, is no. We cannot be assured that IAEA inspectors will physically and personally be present on every single site.
You know, you don't have to be physically present on every site in this technological world to get done what is necessary. Our labs can walk you through those parameters as well.
Who will decide what is and is not a military site?
Well, I think the better way to respond to your question is to say if the IA believes that it has justification to have access to a site, we have a process to ensure they get that access, whatever that site is, military or non-military.
Can Iran deem its research universities to be a military site?
As I said, if they have justification to enter any site, regardless of what it is, and the access agreement provides a process to ensure they will get access. The United States of America would not have agreed to an agreement where access was not assured if the IAEA believed it had to have it. And that is what we have in this agreement.
Are you aware of any actions the government of Iran has taken to sanitize any sensitive or suspected sites since the date of the JCPOA?
I'm not going to discuss anything that would be considered classified, but there's an all-Senate briefing this afternoon. The National Intelligence Manager will be there, and we will be prepared to answer these questions.
Let's move to the side deals between the IAEA and Iran. You acknowledged to Senator Scott that you read the side agreements between the IAEA and Iran. Did anyone else in the United States government read these side agreements?
Yes, some of our experts did as well, as did all of the P5+1.
Can you give me an estimate of how many officials read the side agreements?
Handful. I'd have to stop and think.
So you've said earlier to Senator Corker that we have to honor the confidentiality of these agreements between the IAEA and Iran, but if you have read them...
Well, actually, it's the IAEA and every country with which it does safeguards confidential protocols.
I'll come to that in a moment. But the fact that you have read them and other U.S. government officials have read them, doesn't that undermine the claim of supposed confidentiality in these agreements?
Well, we were shown them in a confidential setting. And I will share with the United States Senate, as I have done with House leadership chairs and rankings, my confidential understanding, and we will hopefully keep them in a classified setting.
How long are these documents?
Very short.
Like the roadmap itself?
I'd have to stop and think back, but it's very short.
Why are these documents classified? This is not a U.S. government document. It's not a covert action. It's not subject to sensitive collection and methods of our intelligence community. Iran knows what they agreed to. You know what's in it. Why are these classified?
So the reason is they are what are called safeguards confidential.
Yes.
Under the Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement, to which we are also a party, we have confidential safeguards, confidential documents and protocols with the IAEA between the United States and the IAEA, as do all of the countries that are under the CSA. The IAEA has committed to keeping them confidential. And so, therefore, they are committed to keeping these protocols under CSA confidential as well.
Yes, I'm aware that that is the statement you also gave to Senator Corker. I assume that you're not implying any kind of moral equivalence between the United States and Iran.
Absolutely not, and I indeed said to a senator, you were not here yet, Senator Cotton, that I understood that this was a very different circumstance in the sense that we were trying to keep Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, and that this was an international understanding that had been negotiated among 6 parties and Iran. So yes, I understand this is different circumstance, which is why I believe the IAEA at an expert level shared the protocol arrangements, understanding they would be classified, and I made clear to the IAEA under our system I would be required to share in a classified confidential setting with members of the United States Congress what I had seen, and I will do so this afternoon.
Did you make clear to Iran and the other parties that U.S. law that was in fact signed in the middle of these negotiations, required Congress to receive the text of all agreements, to include agreements to which the United States was not a party?
Indeed, our understanding of the Corker-Cardin legislation that was passed by the House and the Senate is that we must give you every document that we have, and we have given you every document that we have.
No, the legislation says all agreements. It doesn't actually matter whether the United States government has it in its possession
Well, it's very
or
difficult.
not.
It's very difficult to give you something that we do not have.
Did you make that clear to Iran and the IAEA at the time, however?
Iran and the IAEA are quite well aware of our legislation. I can assure you they follow what you do every single day.
And one final question. The fascinating new interview today from Secretary Kerry and Jeffrey Goldberg says that if Congress were to vote no on this, it would be screwing the Ayatollah. And then Secretary Kerry says that if Congress rejects the deal, it would show Iran, quote, America is not going to negotiate in good faith. It didn't negotiate in good faith now, and that would be the Ayatollah's point. Surely you made clear to Iran that Congress had to vote on this deal before it could go forward, and therefore they should not be operating under such a misperception.
Of course, they knew that Congress was going to vote on this. Everything was very public. Everything that happens here in our country is transparent, democratic, and public, and we're very proud of that fact.
Are you concerned about Congress screwing the Ayatollah?
I have not seen this interview. I'm not going to comment on it, Senator. What I will comment on is that Secretary Kerry, Secretary Moniz, myself, the negotiating team who have been working diligently on this for over 2 years, having briefed the United States Senate and the Congress countless times, hundreds of times, quite frankly, did everything they could to ensure the safety and security of the United States. That's our solemn obligation, and that's what we did.
Thank you.